What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. So one that was coming out on the 27th of January that I definitely wanted to go over just because I haven't revisited this band in a while, and like literally the only album I own by this band is very different from a lot of the stuff they've done. So I was kind of curious about what this band sounded like now after they had kind of reformed. I don't know, this band has an interesting history, but we'll go over it here in a little bit. But we're going to go over the newest offering from And Oceans. As in Gardens, so in Tunes. This again comes out on the 27th of January on Season of Mist Records. This band formed in 1995 in Finland. This is their 6th album overall, technically. This band started off as, I guess you could say, symphonic black metal or melodic black metal, and then took a hard turn to more industrial metal, which is where I jumped on with the album Cypher, which, well, I mean, it's not that memorable of an album, honestly. Like, I really wasn't a big fan of it, so I really haven't followed up on the band in a while. It's about as interesting as that album cover is. Now, I believe not too long after that album dropped, they renamed the band Havoc Unit, so essentially, And Oceans was done, Havoc Unit continued. They put out an album in 2008, and then I guess they kind of went dormant for a little while. And I guess somewhere in the 20-teens, they reformed, and then in 2020 put out an album, Cosmic World Mother, which actually got a lot of fairly rave reviews, and they had returned to their older style again. Now again, that is the style that I really wasn't familiar with because I didn't start with them way back in their earlier work. I started again with the more industrial stuff, which I really wasn't a fan of. But I definitely wanted to check out this one, and the fact that this band shares members with other bands like Before the Dawn, Fester Day, and Gorphelia definitely makes me interested because I do like all those bands. So they have definitely returned to their roots, and this is definitely very melodic black metal with lots of synths. I really wouldn't call it symphonic black metal. Like, it doesn't have like flat out like orchestral sections. Like, it's all handled by the keyboards, but for the most part handled really well, and it doesn't go too over the top with like, you know, lavish string sections and trying to throw in horns and, you know, trying to make the music as gaudy as possible. At its core, this is definitely just very melodic black metal, very much in the vein of like early Dimmu Borgir, I would say Emperor, Keep a Kalessin, I would throw that in there. And even like Sacramentum too. Like, it kind of has that sort of vibe. Like, it's very cold. The vocals are very harsh for the most part. And it's very epic. It's very triumphant. Like, that is sort of a big feel in here. But it does sort of play off of like a darker side in this album. And it does make for a really interesting listen. The opening track, which is the title track, immediately launches into blast beats, and holy shit, this album likes to blast. But they do have the drummer from Gorphelia, and he definitely knows what he's doing, because this drum performance in here is absolutely intense, bordering on exhausting. It seems as though, you know, even in these slower moments here, the double bass is constantly flying on here, and if it's not doing a flat-out blast beat, it's doing thrashy sections. It is almost exhausting to listen to because the pace of this album is just very fast in terms of the drum work. But that is matched by the guitars being a constant, you know, drone of tremolo riffs, again, going from like ascending, more triumphant riffs with, you know, lots of cool melodies on it to like more dark, sinister riffs. The triumphant vibe, I would say, is a big part of this, but you do get some more somber, sort of dreary stuff like Wine into Water, which seems like a mistake. It seems like you're doing that in an ass backwards thing, like you're gonna ruin the fucking party. But anyway, that song, a little bit more dreary, a little bit more sullen, kind of slows down a little bit. I mean, you know, kind of the tempo, but again, double bass is constantly going on there. But it is more notably dreary and somber versus a song like The Collector and His Construct, or With Fire and Crystal, which is possibly one of my favorite songs in here. Lots of good ascending melodies, a very triumphant vibe, like charging into battle, albeit in the frosty cold, which that makes it a perfect January release in my book. But those songs have some instant hooks, especially within Fire and the Crystal. I think, again, that song is absolutely magnificent. I love the dynamic shifts. It has this steady stride of a beginning, like definitely very triumphant. You know, you feel like you're conquering something, like shoveling snow out of the driveway quickly. I don't know, like that's the thing that I still need to conquer right now, but you know, maybe the song will motivate me. I think the vocals are a little bit more dynamic in here. You get good screams, you get good low growls, and there's also like a section where they sound more desperate, like they are, again, calling from the bottom of a well, which, you know, reverb, of course, is a big thing with black metal, and I think the reverb levels are pretty good on the vocals. But I like how this song starts off very triumphant, and then towards the end it kind of shifts into doomier, darker territory. Like it takes on a more sinister sort of vibe. Has a breakdown section where it slows down, the riff is not necessarily a tremolo, it's like it's a good heavy fucking riff, and then boom into way more cold, sinister tremolos, and coupled with that insane drum work, kind of brought to mind Marduk a bit. You know, granted, not as like, well, blasphemous, obviously, but still retaining some really good melodies on there and still driving home a really good hook. But I like those dynamic sweeps in there in terms of making the song more of a journey. And those kinds of songs really ended up being my favorites on here. Like the last two tracks in here, The Earth Canvas and Ambivalent God, man, those are two of the best tracks on the entire album. The dynamics are excellent. The melodies that come up, especially in The Earth Canvas, there's a crawling lead melody that, you know, kind of gets on top of the droning tremolo riffs, which tremolo riffs are, again, a huge part of this. They're constantly going, and I do love the atmosphere that they create and some of the hooks they create, but sometimes they do get a little bit old. This spices it up with some really cool lead melodies on top. It's almost folky. It's kind of cold, but, you know, very, I don't know, inviting. Like, I just kind of like the whole vibe. It's an instant earworm once again, and I just like how this song flows. Even with the constant blasting, which can kind of make a song a little bit static, I think the guitars and the synths coupled together create some really awesome melodies on that one. And Ambivalent God is just huge. It's the longest track on the album, absolutely fucking massive, and kind of wisely slows down the album a little bit. Like, it definitely still has some blasting sections, but for the most part, it's a little bit slower. And the vocal dynamics on that are really cool as well. They actually include some whispers in there. And I like that flip between the whispers and the screams. It kind of feels very desperate and very anguished. And while they do somber and triumphant really well, they also do sinister pretty well too on songs like Carried on Lead Wings. This song definitely just sounds like straight up black metal. I mean, yeah, there's some pretty synths on it and there's some really good melodies, but the overall vibe of it is a lot colder, a lot darker, a lot more aggressive sounding. I do like the spot in the song where they isolate the synths and sort of, like, you know, kind of deconstruct the song down to this synth melody and then come back just as ferocious as ever. But as much as the song still has melody, I like the more, like, aggressive nature of it. And that kind of, you know, opened up the album a little bit, because a lot of this album kind of hangs on one particular mood. Like, it feels very forlorn, very cold. It never really feels evil, maybe minus a couple of moments. Like, that is definitely not the vibe on here. But I would say it feels very lush. Like, the production here is very layered. I would say this kind of has the whole wall of sound thing, where, you know, the constant droning tremolo riffs and the blasts and the, you know, anguish vocals definitely fill out a lot of the sound, but you have a whole layer of synths on here that fill out every possible other layer. And the synths are constantly busy on here, and I do have some issues. Like, it's kind of a love-hate thing with the synths. For the most part, I do love them, and where they are strong, I think they excel at making the songs even bigger. For the most part, they sort of hang in the background. They kind of accent the melodies, they kind of follow along with the riffs, and they sound really good. But it's when they sort of step outside and become a more focal part of the song is where I have, like, sort of a love-hate relationship. Where I really like them, and where I think they kind of step outside of the usual mode, or where they kind of take a little bit of like an 80s, almost 70s Moog synth sound. Like, the end of Ambivalent God is very much like Tangerine Dream, and same thing with The Earth Canvas and Carried on Wings of Lead. You have these moments where they are a little bit more 80s-ish. They sound, you know, just 80s. I don't know, like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, think just 80s songs and, like, you know, 70s prog. Like, they're a little bit warmer, I guess, and I really like those touches. It kind of breaks up the, you know, kind of monotony of all the tremolo riffs and blast beats and adds a really cool dynamic that is a little bit outside of what you're usually hearing when it comes down to symphonic black metal in terms of the synth work. Now, where they don't work, and it's sort of a callback to the And Oceans that I own, Cypher, is where they get a little bit more industrial. And some of those transitions into those moments can be absolutely jarring. The opening track, the title track, has a moment where everything sort of drops out and you get these very, well, industrial metal sort of synths. And it just feels like it's sort of forced in there. The keys in this part just sound a little techno-y, and they add like a stuttering effect on the vocals, and it's just, I don't know, it's kind of off-putting. Like, it just doesn't seem to fit. Now, it does get back to, you know, what the core of the song is, but That moment, well, it kind of had me worried for the rest of it, and, well, it kind of showed up again on songs like Cloudheads, Wine into Water, and Inverse Magnification Matrix. Now, where they come in are just at odd points. Like, it just kind of abruptly stops, and it's just ill-fitting. Cloudhead starts off really well, I think. Like, it's a very aggressive song. There's even some thrashier sections. Like, it's very high energy, and then it hits this cool breakdown, and you're like, all right, we got this cool, like, slower rhythm. Like, dude's hitting the fucking crash really hard. Like, all right, this is kind of moshable, and so the guitar's taking over and, like, delivering some chuggy riffs. You get, like, this weird synth part that sounds like it was spliced out of, like, a Static X album. Like, it just feels odd. Kind of the same issue on Wine into Water. Like, the songs really fucking gain a head of steam. Like, it's, again, very intense, very dynamic, lots of great melodies, and then you get this weird industrial section, which is a callback to, like, their more industrial sound before, and I don't know, it kind of derails the song, and it kind of doesn't necessarily recover fully from it. Like, this transition kind of comes out of nowhere, and then transitioning back into what the rest of the song was like, I don't know, I don't necessarily think it was thought out very well. And Inverse Magnification Matrix, again, another song that, had something really cool going. It was a little bit more dark and sinister. I kind of like the more groovy sections on it, and then kind of, again, out of nowhere, they have this kind of industrial section with the spoken word, like the, industrial keys come back, and then it sort of carries it on. There is this sort of keyboard loop that keeps happening, and it sounds like just a random dubstep burp, and it plays in the background behind the blast and the tremolos, and I was like, man, that is jarring. That doesn't necessarily fit. Now, I like when bands experiment and try some different things, but getting them to work together and play off of one another is kind of tricky. Like, this just feels kind of forced. Like, they threw industrial metal and black metal in a room and told them that you are going to be friends. And, well, they didn't end up being friends. Like, they just said, listen, let's just get this over with. Those moments on this album kind of took me out of it a little bit. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this music. Like, I think when it comes down to their more straightforward style, they execute the sound really well. The melodies are absolutely infectious, and I think when they are at their most dynamic, I think they are at their most creative. Again, the last two songs in here, I would love to hear more of that on this album. Maybe instead of the industrial moments, add some leads, because lead melodies are kind of rare here. I mean, there's a lot of cool, like, interplay with the guitars in terms of, like, harmonies and such, but, like, something else other than those industrial sections. But honestly, I do dig this. I think this is pretty damn good for the most part. Like, there are some moments in here, of course, that I just did not get into, and some, like, creative choices that I thought were kind of strange, and maybe just callbacks to an era that maybe is best left behind. But overall, this is a solid album, so I'm going to go ahead and give it 3.5 stars. This is really good melodic black metal. I wouldn't necessarily call it symphonic black metal, but it's definitely very keyboard heavy. But for the most part, the keys do a good job accenting the melodies. The songs are very driven, very intense too. Like, I love the drum performance on here. It is, again, exhausting. Like, this dude never skips leg day, and his cardio must be fucking something else. Like, it's that fucking fast. The melodies are solid. I think the production's really good. The vocals are really good. It's just that, it's kind of a 50-50 thing when they kind of get outside of the box and try to do something a little bit extra. You get some mixed results. Again, the more industrial stuff, it just doesn't fit. It just feels forced. But again, the more lush synths that are kind of 80s-ish, those do fit. I think that's because it kind of fits with the kind of lush sound of the album, the very full sound of it. Luckily, the industrial sections were not the bulk of the album. I think most of this is really solid. If you're a fan of early Dimmu Borgir, Sacramentum, Keep It Kalessin, Emperor, I think you definitely find some stuff on here you dig. So yeah, definitely check it out. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there is a link down below at thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is down there, as well as our store. We do need to restock on shirts, but we'll eventually get around to it. We got a lot of other stuff we're working on, and one of those things is Denver Death Fest. This will be taking place April 20th through April 22nd in Denver, Colorado, because it's Denver Death Fest. This is the second announcement for lineups. The third one will be sometime next week. It's usually on a Tuesday. We're pretty excited about this. This is quite the endeavor, and I don't know, like so far it seems like it's coming together. I mean, you know, we had to deal with the whole venue change thing, but we powered through. We found a better venue, I think. But yeah, we're excited to see you there, and if you'd like tickets, there's a link down below to their website as well. So yeah, hopefully you guys check it out. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. It means the fucking world to us. This has been a really insane ride over these last 4 years, and well, we're looking to make 2023 just as good. This has been just a lot of fun doing this, and the fan response has been absolutely amazing. You guys are the real heroes because you have to suffer through all of our fucking shenanigans, but somehow you keep coming back, and we really appreciate that. So once again, thank you all so much, and we will catch you later.